my special guest, Azaneth Matara, and her children, homeschool children, are with her as well. You want to say hi? Want to make sure I'm hearing you.
Yes, we're here.
Okay, good. Oh, there's a silent wave there. So to make sure, yes, loud and clear, and you're so beautiful. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Azaneth is the author of this brand new bestseller on Amazon. It is in the top 100 in the Kindle promotional store today. A better way to homeschool for today's Christian family. And it's the subtitle I really love. It's developing well-rounded children who excel beyond the books. And as someone who's been in the homeschool movement for decades, a lot of people made the mistake of thinking it was all about, trying to pass a test and filling in the blanks on the forms. And I love this approach that it's about something much, much bigger than that. My guest again is Azaneth Matara. She's the #1 best-selling author of the brand new book, A Better Way to Homeschool. She was born in Kenya, came to the United States in 1995 and decided to just take the place by storm and raise up a generation of kingdom makers and kingdom takers. So it's an honor to have her. She has a BA, a bachelor's degree in economics, and master's in business administration and finance. She's the mom of 3, and all 3 of her beautiful children are here with her today, 23, 18, and 17. So she's pretty much crossing that finish line over there. No more changing diapers. So Azaneth, why don't you just quickly introduce your children and then we'll dive in.
Okay, from my left is Cliff Isaac Achoka, is my eldest son. He's 23 years old. He just graduated from St. Peter's University in May. He just started his full-time job yesterday in the same university. And in January, he'll be doing his graduate studies with the same university on a scholarship, full scholarship, and he'll be doing cybersecurity, master's in cybersecurity. And here is my only daughter, Imani Achoka. She's 18. Yesterday was her first day at Kali School of Music in Montclair State University. So she's gonna be singing and doing the good things that she does for the next 4 years. And here is the baby, Baraka Achoka, 17 years old. He's now going to be a senior, and he has been the captain of his soccer team. This is now the 3rd year. He just came back from Argentina, where he was picked to go and play soccer. So this is our soccer champion here, and Isaac is in leadership.
So this is why I insisted that you have your kids with you, and it was not easy to do that because they're busy and had a lot of commitments. But I thought it was really important in this topic that the proof is here for everyone to see. You have raised 3 beautiful, godly, accomplished young people. And I think that that was really, really important for everyone to see, that this isn't just, you read some books on homeschooling and thought, well, I think I'll just make myself an expert on homeschooling and write a little book about it with some great ideas. You have walked this out, you've lived it, you've raised your kids, they're extremely successful and accomplished, and we're going to hear more from each of them in just a couple minutes. But I think that the credibility is not just your credentials, your experience, but the results, and that's what everyone wants, the results. So as you were looking at this, Azaneth, what did you see as like the #1 frustration that people have with homeschooling?
That would be work overload. That is the #1 frustration, because as homeschooling parents, I used to sit with other parents and everybody talks about their own curriculum, or mine has allowed my child to succeed. So when I hear from this side, I hear from that side, I try to get everything, and we all end up with just so much work. So if you tell me, Donna, that my child is doing well in math because I'm using a baker, I'll go grab that. And someone else tells me my child is doing well in math because of ACE, I'll go grab that. So guess what? Your child ends up with 3 curriculum all probably just talking about the same thing. So it's just a work overload that does not give a child a chance to thrive, and everybody ends up anxious. So it's work overload.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I remember going to these homeschool conventions and people are walking up and down the aisle, just buying anything that people are selling them because we want our children to achieve. And as moms, we're a little bit nervous, like, well, what if this is tiny but experimental? Less so now than it was when I was doing it back in the day. But so you're nervous and sometimes overcompensating. And so I love that you're offering women. This book is so inspiring to bring confidence. You do not have to beat your kids over the head with textbooks and books and more books and books and books and more books and more books and books and more books and tests. And you've really focused on helping them find their greatness. I want to talk about that. So, but you experienced that yourself, right? And you just finally said no. What was the breaking point for you?
The breaking point was having with Isaac, especially because that time we hadn't known much. He had so much work. At the beginning, it was easy, but as we continued, it's more tests, longer textbooks. And I remember when he was trying to do his SAT, he still hadn't finished the schoolwork that he was doing. He actually ended up going to college, still having some work to finish.
Right.
That I was like, you know what? No, this can't happen. We have to switch on how we are doing things. That was the breaking point.
I love that. I love that. And there are a lot, there are a lot of homeschool books. I've bought them all. I think I probably bought 1,000 because that's what homeschool moms do, right? We love to we need all the input that we can get. But you notice something missing in a lot of those books. And I did too. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you feel was missing that you're addressing here in this book?
What I'm addressing there is we are all, as homeschoolers, we are all running for the academic. How about a child's skills? How about a child's gifting? I'm sure God has given us, each one of us, a gift. So if you're giving your child all the work, academic, math, English, when do you give this child a breathing space to grow and to nurture their God-given talent, skill, gifting area? And that's what I'm addressing in that book.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? We prayed about the cover and it just turned out so amazing because if you look, I'll hold it up, hold it still. What do we have? We have a musical instrument. We have a camera that represents travel, world experiences. We have a palette that represents art, a soccer ball. Some people are into sports. We have writing music, creating music, that there's more to life. And I'm an academic. I'm an author. I'm a writer. Books are my thing. So for me, the kind of standard, give your kid a pile of books, that would have worked fine for me, but it doesn't work for every child. And again, I love the freedom that you're giving people to go on this journey and to do what's right for your own children. And you have to know your children in order to do that. So I want to give your kids a chance to speak. They're going to weigh in. Okay, so first I want to hear from Isaac. His mom mentioned already, he recently graduated from St. Peter's University, and it's a Jesuit school. He's starting his graduate school work in cybersecurity on scholarship. He's had many leadership positions and is kind of the face of this university. They've got him on billboards. Isaac, we would love to hear from you. How did your mother's very unique approach, her better way to homeschooling, how did that make a difference in your life? And maybe tell us even like before and after, the difference once you found the better way.
So initially, I did not start homeschooling. I did start going to school and then transition into a homeschooling curriculum. And one of the main differences that I noticed was that just the environment allowed me to, like my mother mentioned, grow my skills, grow the things that that she saw in me that I may have not even seen in myself. and just also developing that confidence. And being in that homeschool setting allowed me to nurture everything that I was able to see, that my mother was able to see in me. And it also, with as it pertains to leadership, just stepping into the leadership role, having gone through all the development in the homeschooling system, and then going into the outside world, going into the schooling system, I was already prepared for that. So that's one of the things that happened.
Well, your mother gave you the character to step into it. If I can tell a story, one of my favorite stories about homeschooling, my oldest daughter's passion was horses. And of course, very frightening because she wanted to jump the horses, which is like the most dangerous, sport that there is. So she loved her horses, and she was coming home from the barn where she was training for these competitions, telling me about her best friend. And, this, that, and the other, her best friend this and her best friend that. And I finally met her best friend, and it was a 40-year-old flight attendant. Because when we homeschool our children, they're not locked into that. The only people that they can talk to or know are people the exact same age as them. Our children learn that they can relate to anyone. They can talk to a 40-year-old woman. They can talk to a little child. And I think that was the things that I loved most about homeschooling, and that I think is, I don't want to be anti-school, but I think is unhealthy about the current model of schooling, where you only have people exactly the same age as you, probably from exactly the same or very similar background as you, from the same neighborhood as you. And it really doesn't expand your horizons, like being out in the world, being in the community, being part of different organizations, really expand your horizons a lot. And that's probably why you're such a leader. Well, now I'm going to go to Imani. And it's amazing that you're here because you just started college yesterday at the Cali School of Music at Montclair State University. Studying classical voice. And I know that it's a big sacrifice, probably for all of you, but especially maybe Imani for you, to be here with your mom to support her in what she's doing with introducing a better way to homeschool to the world. Share a little bit about how you were able to find your voice thanks to your mom's unique approach. She didn't have you buried in books all day.
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit to, I would say maybe when I was 12 years old. So I think when I was 12, I was in 7th grade or 8th grade. I don't remember. That was a while ago. I'm 18 now. So yeah. So at that time, I had been singing in church and sometimes at home. But one thing that I did have a problem with, I know my mom did mention it in the book, is how I was fearful, and she also had struggled with that as well. And I think probably because I spent so much time with my mom, that I had developed this fear, but not something that I had realized where it had come from. So I used to sing a lot, but then when it came to, I used to sing with choirs, I used to sing with groups, but when it came to singing by myself, I used to shake a lot. And then at some point, I remember this one day at church, I had a solo coming up with the children's choir that I was singing with. And this is when I was 13. And then when it was my part, I started shaking really, really badly. And then I started crying and went off the stage. But something that I was fearful of is I used to crack a lot. So my voice was pretty weak. But I didn't really understand that at the time. I just used to sing and I was like, oh, how are sopranos able to sing so high and stuff? And I'm like, pretty shaky. But at some point when I was being homeschooled, I think homeschooling really gave me a capacity of developing my skills, because while I was at home, I used to watch a lot of videos on ways that I could improve. And I used to actually focus on what I needed to get right and actually understand what was going on, and for me to find my own voice. So I tried to brush up on everything and try to actually realize, oh, whatever I need to do that needs to be right, with me having problems with having nerves that come up here and there, and I don't know what to do with it, I had to focus on my mindset. And there was this one day that it was a 9/11 memorial. I was invited to go sing at the 9/11 memorial. That was probably the biggest thing that I had sung in, because it's the 9/11 memorial, it was the 20th anniversary, 2021. As soon as I woke up that morning, I was so nervous. This was actually after I'd been working on my voice for some time and I'd been home. But something that I did learn is that I was going into this performance and I need to focus on getting it done. I should not be focusing on what other people are thinking about my singing, but I really just tried to focus on what I needed to get done, because at some point your nerves are going to go away because that's something that you're not focusing on. So what I did learn was how to cope within those nerves and actually try to not use it as a distraction, but really just to focus on what I needed to get done. And even though the fear was there, I was able to actually get a hold of myself. So I think then afterwards, then I started to perform more. As much as I do perform a lot, the nerves don't go away. They still stay there. But something that I did learn was in having that, in being in a home capacity, was I was able to actually develop on what I needed to get right and actually focus on myself. And I think with homeschooling, it gives you a capacity on working on different skills. As much as people may love books, they might love singing, they might like riding a horse, like what you had said about your daughter. Like there are different ways that you can actually discover and just experiment. Oh, what is it that your child thrives on? And so for me, that I actually have a huge passion in music, and that's something that I really love to do. And I'm glad that I was able to, spend more time with my mom as well. That's another benefit of homeschooling, is that you're able to spend time more with your parents, and your parents are also able to see what your child is actually taking in, rather than really relying on what you cannot see. Of course, once you drop your child at a school environment, you don't really know what is going on, what your child is taking in. But I think it's more, you get more confidence on what your child is taking in and what you want your child to do. You spend more time with your child, you know what your child is doing, you know what your child wants to do. So with me being at Montclair State University, I think that homeschooling really did come with a benefit. And obviously there were some hard things, like, I had to keep the discipline as well with being homeschooling, because as much as it is a huge capacity, you have to make sure that you're focused and you keep the discipline, because you do have time in your hands, but it can really come to your benefit. So that's a way that homeschooling really helped me to this point. And I'm really glad that I was able to do that. And I did that within like a good maybe 3 years, because I was able to develop on what I needed to get right.
Well, you are just so beautiful. And I want to pick up on just a few things that you said. First is that the reason many people are going to find this video, by the way, you'll see the replay at betterwaytohomeschool.com, is because parents did find out what's going on in those classrooms. It was a little thing called COVID and a little thing called Zoom. And a lot of parents got an inside look at what is being taught in those classrooms and realized that they are not okay with it. And I think that that is why many new families are discovering the power of homeschool. And I also wanted to pick up on 3 things that you mentioned. You talked about fear. We're going to go to Baraka next. Maybe I'll talk about fear too. Focus and discipline. And actually, there's an entire chapter in the book on, being willing to do it afraid, being willing to fail and do it afraid. I'm going to go to Baraka next. And there's a lot in the book on training our children to be focused, to be self-disciplined. It's about giving our children the inner fortitude so that once they do discover their gift, they have what it takes to truly excel at it. And both of you are truly, excelling in life and in your gifting. So, Mom, I don't know if there's anything you want to add before I go to Baraka to what you're first to have said.
I think they've really said the exact thing that they went through. with both of them, with Isaac being in leadership. For Isaac, when we realized he used to love basketball, but then because we had so much work for him to do, he ended up not developing that part of him. So when we realized was, you know what? Okay, so that part didn't work. What else is he good at? And then that's when we started developing the leadership skill, and his phenomenon. And Imani, I've learned a lot from her. The way she just fights through, and the fear, I've learned a lot from her. Yeah.
That's really, really precious. I wanted to mention to everybody, those joining me, I'm interviewing Asenath Matara. She is the Amazon #1 best-selling author. This brand new, wonderful book, beautiful book, A Better Way to Homeschool for Today's Christian Family. It's about developing well-rounded children who excel beyond the books. And we love books. She just wrote one. I've written 30 of them. I've published 50 more. I love books, but not all children are bookish. And we need to give our children the freedom to be who they are and to find their God-given zone of genius. We need to give them that place where they can feel successful and fruitful and good about themselves. And I think that that's critically important, as you're hearing from our children. And as I've mentioned, the emphasis of this book, A Better Way to Homeschool, is really focusing on what matters, their character and their gifting. Those are the things that our children are going to take with them into life. And that's what we should be prioritizing, not getting through X amount of material. That's not the goal. I'm going to share one more story that just came to me. When we were homeschooling, we lived in the mountains by choice. We wanted a very quiet life. So we lived on the side of a mountain cabin. And the neighbor right on the other side of the mountain, the father died on Christmas Day. It was actually really tragic. And she had 3 children, and the little boy, his father died. And they said, well, he's got ADD. We need to drug him. He was a little boy grieving his father's death. That's what he was. But they wanted to drug him. And the mom came to me and said, would you take my son? Would you homeschool him as well? And I'm like, yeah, of course. She didn't want him drugged. And all I let him do was just be a little boy. We read Jack London. I read aloud to him. He didn't want to read either. He would go out and find a snake and, okay, well, let's research the snake, or find a salamander. Well, let's find out about the salamander. And what he needed more than anything was to be a little boy out exploring things, making things, kind of a science field that interested him. He was interested in nature. We made 3 different gardens to experiment with different types of soils. That's what that little boy needed in that season. And again, that's one of the things that I think is wonderful about homeschool, is that we can really customize it to the needs of the family and the needs of the child. So Baraka, your mom shared a story, an example in the book from your life about learning from failure. And it's so important, failure is not permanent. And that's what happens to so many people. It's not that they're not successful. They just didn't get up enough times. Success is getting up one more time than you fell down. So would you tell us that story, the one I'm talking about, and how homeschool has shaped your view on success and failure?
All right, so that story was based on when I was a freshman in high school. And me and my brother are mostly like the sports people in the house. So we were really passionate at basketball at the time. And unfortunately at the time, I wasn't like as fit as everyone else on the JV team that I was playing for in high school. And it was towards the beginning of the season, and I had gone to practice. And before I even got into the practice room, a lot of people were telling me, like, a lot of my teammates were like, yeah, man, you might be cut today or whatever, because I'd missed a practice before that due to religious purposes. And the coach had welcomed me in, but in front of everyone, he just told me, oh, good night. Yeah, you're off the team. And I was cut. And at the time, I was really devastated. And I felt like I was really preparing myself to play this season with the team and prove that I'm good enough for the team. But unfortunately, it didn't work like that. And I think I could say in terms of self-esteem and confidence, I was kind of low. So that's why I called my mom being like really devastated. And she just comforted me at the time. And I was able to go home and figure out a way to think on certain things from a certain point of view. Like, that's what I could say that homeschooling is. It gave me more of a way to think freely and a way of being more flexible with my thoughts. And especially when it comes to negative things like failure, but all that time I spent with my mother in the homeschooling system gave me a chance to look at life from a different point of view, to look at failure from a positive point of view, actually, to a point where it's more of a lesson and not more of like a punishment. So I guess from then on, I had learned that failure is something that I'm not afraid to commit. And I actually sometimes I could, as weird as it sounds, I could sort of get a sense of happiness from failing, because I know that in order to get better, I have to fail first. And I just kept my head up high, and I just believed in what my talent was. And that's how I ended up finding my love for soccer more. I love soccer a lot, especially, but I was not focused on it as much as I was in basketball at the time. But just being able to cut basketball out and give me the freedom to experiment other things while I was home in that COVID time, I was able to become better at the sport and fall in love with it and use it as a therapeutic type of way to cope with failing in basketball. And yeah, I was able to get a lot of blessings from it, thankfully. So I think that I wouldn't have been able to look at failure from that point of view if it went as early as I did, without being able to be homeschooled and have time and space to make mistakes like those.
That's incredible. Those of you who missed the beginning of the interview, he just came back from Argentina, where he's been playing soccer. So you're a tremendous soccer player, very gifted.
Yep.
Already at your age, traveling the world to play soccer. And soccer, I mean, basketball is wonderful, but soccer is the universal football, they call it, and the rest of the world is really the universal sport and opens the entire globe to you. So I really enjoyed that. And again, this truly is a very, very unique book, A Better Way to Homeschool. It's not about, and I know when we first talked as an we talked about like you could make curriculum recommendations and stuff like that. And that took you in a different direction. It's not about curriculum's wonderful. And, everybody has advice on curriculum. I could give you advice on curriculum. But this is about teaching our children really important things like Baraka was talking about, that understanding failure is just part of life. And if the people who can get back up one more time are the people who are going to make it. One of the slogans that we had in our family is that what feels like rejection is often God's protection, because you're heading in the wrong direction. And as much as you loved basketball, the direction that God had for you was clearly soccer, international football. And I have full confidence that you're going to be every bit as successful and accomplished as your older siblings are as well. I want to mention to everybody who's joining me live that you can actually get this book free on Kindle right now. On Amazon, you can go to Better Way to Homeschool, betterwaytohomeschool.com. But even if you're not joining us live, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it free. And otherwise, it's probably going to be, just a couple bucks, well worth it. I'd highly encourage you to get the paperback. It's a beautiful book, and it's the kind of thing you can cozy up, mom, at the end of the day, cozy up into bed and get that inspiration and encouragement from a mom who has done it. She has done it. She's not just talking the talk. She's walking the walk. And I know that you'll be greatly, greatly encouraged. I want to mention that Asenath does have a couple resources available for you also at that same website, Better Way to Homeschool. And that is a gift, the #1 skill set to teach your kids. It's a good one. It's a good one. She's got to give you a hint. Take a look at her oldest son. The #1 life skill that you need to teach your children. And you can get that free instant download. You can go to betterwaytohomeschool.com or shortcut gift.betterwaytohomeschool.com. She also, for those joining us live, beginning on September 1st, she's going to have an event, 12 days to restore joy and purpose to your home school. Also on that same page, you can find out how to join her Facebook group, where you can meet with other homeschool moms and get the encouragement that you need. Asenath, let me go back to you I know that your kids are busy and they've got to get back to all their commitments. I'm just so glad that they were able to join us today. Any closing thoughts that you want to share with everyone?
Well, anybody who has read the book, or even if you haven't read the book and you've seen my kids and what we've spoken about, and you are ready to take that journey, the first thing you should do is to assess your homeschool reality. Look at what you have, your curriculum. Is it supportive of your child's gifting area? If it's not, it is time to change. And then next, look at the cost. You have to estimate your cost, because your cost, if you have not done a good job estimating it, is going to bring your homeschool dream to an abrupt stop. Because remember what happened during the COVID, because of the finances, so many people's dreams changed. So you have to look at your costs. You have to keep your budget, because if you're going to build your children's skills, it does cost money. I can tell you that it does. And it's a good way to keep a budget. And you know what, when you keep a budget, you're obeying what God wants us to do. It's good stewardship, and you have a chance of also teaching your children along the way. And then when all those things are, the basics are done, it is time to build your children's gifts by teaching them proper habits. Because Imani had a gift, but imagine if she continued living in fear, she would never have done it. If you didn't learn about failure, we wouldn't have done it. If you didn't believe about leadership, we would have. So we have to teach our children about the good habits. That's my final thoughts.
Well, your family is just, I don't know if you know the saying, the proof is in the pudding. Your children are absolutely beautiful, so accomplished, and walking with the Lord in godly character. You know, there's no greater joy than to know that your children are walking in the truth. And I know, kids, this was a sacrifice for you to be here with your mom today. But I think you sold her book for her. Anyone who just watched this is going to go and get a copy of this so that you can have beautiful, accomplished children. And the secret is to discover a better way to homeschool. Stop beating your children over the head with curriculum. Stop looking at what other families are doing. Stop comparing yourself, and look to God, and look to his guidance, and look to your children, to their heart, to their mind, and the desires of their hearts, and just bring that out in them. This has been wonderful. I want to encourage everyone again, get the book. Go to Better Way to Homeschool, betterwaytohomeschool.com, and that's where you can find out, get the link, go and get your copy of the book. Again, if you're joining us live, you can get the Kindle for free. Paperback is gorgeous and well worth the purchase. We'll have this replay. If you joined us late, we'll have the full replay of this interview available on that same website. That's where you can get the free gift, get on her mailing list, and follow her ministry. The number one life skill that you need to teach your kids, and also the link to her Facebook group. So lots of good stuff on there. Want to thank everybody for joining us. I'm Donna Partow. I'll see you next time. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are adorable.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.